let's talk about Tata and how we're doing there. So a few statements. I always like to make a few statements, lays a bit the groundwork. First of all, technology will not fix your cultural problem. Second statement, saying you're DevOps with no ongoing practice improvement plan, with no fix, will not fix your cultural problem as well. And finally, your new fancy delivery pipeline will not fix your cultural problem as well. Because I could go to each and every one of you, you could design a pipeline, and it would probably work. In fact, it would most likely work. But it would not be adapted to my environment, my culture, my history, and where I come in from, and where I want to go. And most importantly, it wouldn't be coming from the people which actually live it and breathe it every day. It's up to them to define the pipeline. It's all about attitude and trust. If you don't manage to create this in your culture, the attitude and trust, your DevOps initiative will most likely fail. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about our journey. Because our journey, I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. There's going to be no filters, right? Because I think within the community, we can talk about these things. Outside, we don't have to, but here we can talk about the ugly things. So, all DevOps journeys are different. Your initial assessment is super important. I put here, the scaled agile, radar. There's lots of frameworks out there, but you need a yardstick. Too many times, I see people, it's kind of gut feel, oh, let's do CI/CD, your user stories aren't right, oh my God. But essentially, you don't know how bad it is, and you don't know which goal you want to attain. So that's important. Consider the history, whoops, sorry about that. Consider the history of the company, where you're coming from. You cannot do a one size fits all. You got to consider the existing culture and adapt it, modify it as you go. Ability and desire to change. Some people want to change, but once you probe it, they don't really desire, right? It's like, oh, well, I don't really want to. How you phase your changes. Set yourself up for success and get executive sponsorship. If you're in a large enterprise and you don't have executive sponsorship, as you will see later on, you will most likely fail. Cultural challenges. What challenges did we have? We had to reconcile Indian, Asian, North American, European cultures, which all have their different ways of working. Some hierarchical versus a flat, empowered cultures, depending on the site, depending on where you are, the hierarchy is different. Teams and people, not necessarily project-focused. Silos, us against them, and the command and control. Right? We all know that command and control, right? It's like, here are my minions, they do what I want. Which is probably against the DevOps culture, right? And against any culture, if you want my opinion. But yet, every manager you meet will say they don't do this. Yet when I look and yes, there's some minions. There's always minions. So leverage the culture strength in your plan and adapt your expectations. It is not realistic to have the same expectations for every project, every site, every culture you're dealing with. Adapt your culture. As you adapt your expectations for your kids, you adapt your expectations for your culture. Geographic challenges. Functions located in various countries and regions. Scrum teams are decentralized, right? You got a product owner in one place, you get the others in the others. Time zones are difficult to reconcile. You get different communication tools. Difficult to remain in certain locations for long periods. Some people don't want to spend 6 months in India. Some people love it. You got to be sensible to that. And you've got to hunt handoffs. Put together a communication plan and limit the handoffs. If you don't limit the handoffs, they are the ones which will eat the most time out of your culture and out of your change. So all those handoffs, and be careful of the time zones. They will eat massively into your time. Trust challenges. Can executives really demonstrate it all the time? There are some situations where you will feel that all that you've done in the past 6 months is no longer there. There's no longer trust. Inside of an hour, you can actually scrap the work that you've done for the past 6 months by scrapping the trust. Command and control is also the enemy of trust. Hierarchy of control is also the enemy of trust, right? It's the army of minions. And then encouraging to fail, but then hunting who failed. Instead of celebrating failure and saying, this is an opportunity. Every time you fail, you should say, okay, this is a test. I'm passing a test here. How am I going to behave? And it should not be, oh my God, panic, anxiety, let's find and hang the person which did it. Right? That happens still too often. And complex processes kill initiative and trust. Lighten the process. The governance should be simple. Review the governance of the company. You have to accept to detach control. Bring it down. Let the people that understand it take the decisions. But you have to give them the right parameters to take the decisions. That's the role as a leader and for your team. Some other corporate challenges. Difficult to align the organization end to end, right? You get legal, you have billing, you have finance, you have the weird guys doing development there. I don't know what the hell they're doing, doing this DevOps thing. The organization needs to be aligned end to end. It's not only about dev and ops, it starts there, it's super important, but you have to align the whole organization to it. You launch agile projects, but burden them with red tape. Let the team operate. Put an umbrella over them. Make sure that they are protected, that they can do what they do best. Skill set challenges at all levels. Work on your skill set. Work on training. Massive training. And you know what? You have to accept that some people are not salvageable. They've worked a long time, and in a way, they will not, and even if you send them to a gazillion trainings, they're not salvageable. Accept it. Fear of change. You always see change, but sometimes you have to phase change. Too much change at once can become disruptive sometimes. You have to phase it and make sure it's accepted. And then there's the wrong management model, right? You cannot manage all projects and all technologies the same way. And I'll talk about that. We're going to talk about Kinevan. You need to get executive sponsorship at the highest level possible and be clear on expectations. That's why the initial assessment is super important. Because if you don't do that initial assessment, you can't be clear on what you're going to do, you can't be clear on the phasing, and you can't get the sponsorship because that person doesn't know what they're actually getting into. Yeah, we're going to do this cool DevOps thing. Yeah, everybody says we got to do it. That you're going to do so much with that. So let's talk about culture change. What's our options? Well, we can start over. It's always nice. I always like watching a good explosion. It's a good thing. So you can blow up the whole thing. Usually it takes the form of we fire everybody and you reapply on your jobs and best of luck. It looks a bit stupid, but some companies have actually done this, right? To my opinion, it's never a good option, but I sympathize with those who would do it. Then there's the team or department conversion approach. Hey, we're going to convert this department. Watch this, right? So then you preach to your silos, right? You have, you're preaching to each of these silos, right? And basically, each of these silos typically have an objective which is in contradiction to this one, in contradiction to this one, in contradiction to this one. And then you're trying to get all of them to work together. So it's very difficult to get tangible end-to-end results. You have to accept also that not all teams are created equal. Some will have greater skill set gaps. Some will be, more open to change. You have to accept it and work with it. Difficult to fix communication gaps. So you have to put a communication plan together so that everybody speaks together. And there's no common goal between teams, right? Projects, etc. These teams, basically you fulfill the us against them culture. So that's usually not a good approach as well. So then what do you do? The project approach. You federate teams around a common goal. Small scale, you start small. I've seen, by the way, I've seen it, Tata, right? Trying to start big usually collapses, right? Because here we are, we're all going to be DevOps tomorrow, and we're going to reorganizing, and here we are. That doesn't work quite well. I tell you, it's part of the ugly, right? So start small, easy, and it's easier to get executive sponsorship, right? Really do this, with a smaller project. You're going to get more chance of success. You do the incubation approach, and a chance to build a blueprint for your culture. You're really building a blueprint. You want to build a blueprint to cross-pollinate your culture. And you start small, and then you involve people, and then you create your pipeline, you create DevOps is in there, and people start enjoying it. Right? It's like going to train, right? If you're just going to train to run and you don't enjoy it, well, you're going to do like most people, right? After Christmas, you go train for a month, and then after that, screw it, I'm okay. But if you enjoy it and you do something you like, well, you know what? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you continue to train. Same thing. You got to enjoy it. And you got to be nimble. But what project to select and which people? It's about having the right attitude. How do I set myself up for success? Well, I like to use the Cynefin framework. This is a known framework, and by the way, I could spend an hour just on that. So you're going to have to trust me on some of this. But I encourage you to go to this link here, which is going to talk about Cynefin. Cynefin essentially was introduced by Dave Snowden in the early 2000s. And it allows to classify projects and to manage projects and to actually be able to classify complexity. Not all projects are created equal, not all teams. So basically you have the obvious domain, where basically you have a best practice, where you have a problem, a known recipe, you fix it. Then you have the complicated domain where you need expert. It's the expert domain. Then you have the complex domain, which is the emergent practice. You can ask 5 experts, not sure you're going to get the same answer. That's an emerging practice. And then you get the chaotic, which is a novel practice, R&D. You move somewhere and you say, okay, well, I don't know if it's really where I want to go, but I need to go somewhere. So I'm going to try and kind of to illustrate this for you, and given we have limited time, I always like to use the car industry. People just get it when I do this. So first, the obvious is an assembly line, right? Well known, you know what you got to do. I put a Honda Civic and a Toyota Corolla. I could have put an Audi R8. Basically, it's a known thing. There's issues, it's fixed. Car line goes, it's obvious, right? Workers are there. It's not the same type of worker in the complex domain. Then you have the complicated domain, good practice, experts. What's the analogy to that? Well, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, there's craftsman there. There's the guy, which is the pro of leather. He's the craftsman for that. They're proud. They do all this. They're typically complicated. And if they weren't there, you can't build this. You can't build this on a chain. Because if you look at any video you've seen, they take the wood, it takes days, etc. It's a skilled person, an expert. That's what the complicated domain is. Then you have the complex domain. Just a side note here, if you try to impose command and control into a complex domain, an emergent practice, you will most likely fail. You have to set the stage, step back, and eventually patterns will emerge. And this is the zone of rapid change, innovation. And by the way, you should pick your projects in this domain when you start your DevOps initiative. Because this is where typically you have the people with the right attitude to start, and which will be open to your change. And what is the complex domain? Well, the analogy is Formula One. Formula One, for one race, you have a setup from the engine and the aerodynamics. For the next race, you have to build a whole new set of wings, a whole new set, maybe even change, some of the aerodynamic, foundation of the car. But this is all done in a very collaborative, DevOps-like culture, right? Reason I know is that I followed tightly a team in the past, so this is really what they do. Right? So this is example of a complex project structure. And then there's the chaotic domain, again, novel practice, sense. So here what you have is chaos, right? Huge failures, here you move somewhere, go somewhere, we'll eventually put a street light here, what we'll see. And basically cold fusion, these type of things, Novel practice. And then the other thing you got to do is break the silos. Limit your handoffs. Federate teams around a common goal. Find this project that you selected in the complex domain, federate people around it, but federate people with the right attitude because you're starting out. You're not cross-pollinating, you're not doing any cross-transfers yet. You're setting up yourself for success. Small scale, again, get the executive sponsorship. This is your chance to build your blueprint. If you are successful here, other teams will want to work like this. This is your chance to, don't break it. This is your chance to build your culture change. Right? Be nimble. And most importantly, don't impose the blueprint. I see this sometimes. Oh, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it like that, etc. This will appear from the team's practice. Let the team work. Let the good things emerge. What will emerge is a practice which is adapted to your culture and where you want to go. Of course, sometimes it needs a little governance. Got it? But normally 80% of the work, the team comes up with it, if not more. Let it emerge. Know your strengths and adapt. Some cultures will be more execution-based, while others are more creative. How it is. Like, let's say I would typically, again, stereotypes, please don't throw anything at me, but let's say I typically take some teams in India, they're more execution-centric, which is good. Okay? So be sensible to that. Use time zones wisely. Plan your handoffs. Again, that's super important. Self-managed teams don't work well in certain teams and culture. You have to review, how you put things together. That's your role as a team leader. Make winning mixes. You're doing a little chemistry here. Some people don't work well together. Well, other than just saying, well, you have to work together. Doesn't help them. You have to do changes. Have the courage to do the changes. Take the time to build a communication strategy. What are you going to do? I know we all bought a whole bunch of big Microsoft hub, and every location, and we could all, basically we're talking, and we imposed a communication strategy. List the strengths and weaknesses for each team and adapt your plan. So Why did I put these two things? So this is my opinion, a standard wireframe, right? What the product owner would put together and say, "Hey guys, I want something like this." Well, if your team is pretty creative, they're going to do this, and basically they're going to wow you with something, right? They say, "Okay, I know what you want. Watch this." And some other teams, well, you need to be more prescriptive. I want this color, I want this, and I want that. Well, adapt your product owners with your teams and adapt everything, because if you feed this to the wrong team, well, you're not too sure what you're going to get. It's adapting your culture. It's adapting your expectations. So, what did we start with? We started with something which looks like this. But what we really wanted, was this. So how do you go from this to this? It's kind of tough, huh? Well, essentially, you have your big ship. Sorry for my drawing, by the way. I suck at this. But this is a big ship, okay? Be imaginative here, And then you have your small boat here. And to do your initial small boat here, you might need external help. You might need somebody consulting for you. This is where you're going to define your blueprint. You need the team with the right attitude here in this first boat, right? Super important. And this is your first DevOps projects, and you need to iterate quickly at it. Get a blueprint out. Then after that, well, if you're successful, what happens is, I have to give you the tip. You try and do this outside the governance of the big Bertha here. This team has to have the required power to do this. They're empowered. And we will do what's necessary to isolate this team. Because if not, they're going to be burdened with the same red tape as this. It doesn't work. Then after that, well, if you're successful, you get something which looks like this. So you can be governed by the big ship, but you will look more like a swarm, an armada of ships, which each of them, this can be projects, which are all DevOps. And then out of this, you bring them slowly back into the governance. But they have a strong practice. And they enlarge in this practice as we put boats back in. And they cross-pollinate each other. And eventually, you get guilds of best practices, and then you get constant improvement. And then eventually the culture changes. Culture change is the toughest change. Because you're addressing psychological, you're addressing, history, you're addressing people, some people will feel threatened by it. It's a difficult change. So how do I know that if the organization is going in the right direction? Have the right reflexes? Fail. Simple as that. That's usually when you know that you get the right sponsorship and you get the right behavior. Is that, let's say you have a significant failure. This is where usually you see the people change. All of a sudden, what appears? Command and control. Move over, I'm taking charge. This team doesn't know what they're doing. I'm taking charge. I'm big here, I have a title. I've seen that happen so many times. So when this happens, and let's say you get the normal behavior and people behave like they're in an exam and they give the tools that's required to the team to succeed, you know you're on the right track. You know it's happening. How do I know my DevOps journey is going well? Teams and people request to work in the new framework. People are happy. They say, yeah, this is great. People request it. They go, yeah, I like it. This new project you put together there? Let's work like that. You don't have to impose it. And then people improve the tooling on their own. Hey, you know what? We just, refined our CI/CD pipeline. We put a new plugin into Jenkins. Awesome. Isn't that all we want? That's what's needed. Why is it so difficult? I know some of you have this difficulty. So So some of our results. So what did we achieve here? After going through some of this, most of this, and some pain, some good successes, we got some awesome successes. So we went from a 6-month release cycle to monthly. Some teams iterate every 2 to 3 weeks. And 6 months here, we were talking massive monolith, big. Went to microservice architecture. Yes, we have now a fancy pipeline too, like probably all have. We can deploy the same, urgent fixes. We fix forward instead of, oh my God, let's roll back. How many times you see this? Oh my God, let's roll back. Fix forward. New common tooling for dev and ops. We were suffering from what I call the push button problem, right? The operations, I don't have a push button, I don't have a process, oh my God. Well, now they create their own tools. We push them the data, put a data lake for them, they create their own tools. Product operations, IT engineering, one team to evaluate design, develop features. They're all working together, they all groom together, they work together day in, day out, they do everything, sit together. Common communication tools with no dependency on geography. We have to be flexible on the time. If you work with someone in Singapore, it's 12 hours in front. It's 11 o'clock for you, it's 11 o'clock at night for him. Be sensible. But it works. We can make it work. And we have people which now they always come to us and say, I want to have the same, I want to work like this. So guys, this is, for Tata Communications, a great journey. It's not ended yet. It takes years. But we're really treading in the right direction. And it's really been an outstanding adventure. Thanks a lot. Thank you all for having me. Questions?